You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Welcome to the 21.5 Show, a podcast for professional pilots by professional pilots. Join Dylan and Max, both with experience in flight instruction, the airlines, and business aviation, as they talk to a variety of industry experts, share stories, and have a little fun along the way.
Welcome back to the 21.5 Show. Max and Dylan coming in extremely hot tonight from Scottsdale, Arizona.
You sound like you're really for it. This has been a long week. I'm just going to say, you and I both have young children. And
many young children.
Homeschooling, we've been doing for about a month. Arizona starts their schools way earlier than many other places in the country. But for those of you about to embark on your homeschooling adventure, enjoy.
Stock up on whatever beverage of choice because it is a long road.
So that means that we have to record late at night.
Yeah, so it's late. We're tired. And Dylan and I were just looking at each other. And so I thought I'd surprise him with the lively intro.
Yeah. All right. Well, in honor of Girls in Aviation Day, that's a program through Women in Aviation coming up on September 26th. We have Lindsay Howell joining us for a conversation. She is a female pilot career coach. She had a lot of great perspective to share with us about women in the industry. She actually interviewed 50 different successful female pilots, learned a lot about their attributes, their history, the factors in their life that helped them get where they are. More information about Girls in Aviation Day we'll have linked in the show notes. Again, that's programmed through Women in Aviation. And then another interesting thing to talk about. I was reading online, if you participate in a coronavirus vaccine trial, you lose your FAA medical.
Yeah, it might seem obvious to a lot of people that the FAA doesn't want you participating in experimental pharmaceutical trials, but apparently not to some.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think about, not just because it's the coronavirus, but I think my assumption would be that the FAA doesn't want you putting things in your body that haven't been thoroughly tested and approved by the Food and Drug Administration.
That's right. But so we had a conversation with one of the doctors affiliated.
You had a conversation.
Yeah, that's
one
right.
of the few interviews I had to miss.
Yeah, that's right. You were gone. I can't remember what you were doing, but
something important.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with one of the doctors that Harvey Watt set us up with to explain a little bit more about that. And he actually had some a little interesting factoid for us as well, as far as waiting not only for FDA approval, but there's also another approval you need to get as a pilot. So stick around for that. That's a lot of good information there.
You know, I wonder if did you guys happen to talk about there was a framework of who is going to get this vaccine and in what order? And it was obviously, you know, the people that were there was 4 groups, and there's, you know, people who were most vulnerable. And then I think the second was frontline workers and first responders, and then children was third, and then it was fourth was like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. No, we did not talk about.
I wonder if professional pilots are going to be ranked in there somewhere.
And I got to tell you,
besides the number 4,
listening to Dr. Faulkner's opinion, I wonder how many professional pilots are going to take the vaccine. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm just going to tease that. So stick around for his...
exciting. This will be the first episode I've listened to that I haven't...
Yeah, you're not going to even know what's coming up.
Exactly what was going to be coming down.
Yeah, so a lot of good information and conversation with him. But before we get to that, we got a shout out to deliver.
Got another very generous donation from Philip B. Thank you, Philip. There's nothing more flattering than when people donate their hard-earned dollars to our silly podcast. So,
yeah,
thank you, Philip. We seriously appreciate it.
Yeah,
we were just talking before we hit the record button. Is we've been getting more donations. I should say the first donation was more donations than we ever thought we would get, but we've been getting a lot of donations, which is awesome. And so we're going to put together something really cool that's unique that you can only get, you know, by making a donation to try and recognize people that are so generous to us. So we will keep you advised of that. I think we have a couple of really good ideas.
When we were getting some of these donations, I was thinking, you know, it's fantasy football season right now, which you hate. You have to play in this league with a bunch of Embry-Riddle guys I mean, our listeners have to be so jealous. Maybe the next donation should be the privilege of taking your place in this league for the year.
No, I'll tell you what. I'll make a donation. If somebody, so here's the thing. I love and I hate fantasy football. I love playing all of my buddies from college and talking outrageous amounts of smack and winning and gloating over the wins and stuff. But I nothing I despise more than managing a fantasy football team.
Yeah.
I hate it with the deepest passion. And my friends all know it too.
Yeah.
Which then they're able to use it against me. And it just, I've I usually have a pay service that helps you. Here's what I'll donate. I'll donate to somebody who will help me manage my fantasy football team.
Oh, a listener supported team.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we have to give Philip B the first right of refusal.
Dude, I don't care. Anybody that knows a lot and is good at fantasy football, because we have to win. That's the thing. Everything is about winning. Let's just be
very clear.
Very clear. It's about winning. You can have all the winnings. I don't even care about the money.
Oh.
I just want to win.
I think that's a good opportunity for a UND graduate who wants to beat a bunch of riddle guys.
It'll just piss everybody off to no end, too.
It'll be very public.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Well, it'll be a new segment for the show where you and your league manager talk every week. Should we drop Deshaun Watson?
Yeah. I'll go, I don't care.
Just win.
As long as, is that going to make us win?
I have to win. So you're not open to starting a second 21-5 league?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
But, man.
We need the drop.
We got a draft tomorrow night at 7:00. It's horribly inconvenient. Remember, I've drafted from other countries, because
because you
remember I drafted from Carpathos, Greece one time with an 8-hour time change. Remember, it was
you know what? One of these, at the end of one of these shows, we need to have a full Carpathos or your Greek trips every year. Let's just say, instead of getting crew cars, Max and the other pilot would rent dirt bikes.
And let's just say there were some repairs that had to be settled up with the proprietor, and some that weren't settled up, but
statute of limitations, good. And yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover. We'll save that one for another one. Anyways, if you want to manage this fantasy football team,
please help me.
It's info215podcast.com. Okay.
I'm not going to beg, but I'm begging.
You just have to win.
Just remember, win.
All right, let's get into the mailbag.
From Andrew H. Y'all need to put a meow into the intro music because it is 21.5. And he's also at Beaver Air Pilot on Instagram. He has some awesome photos on there. So check out Andrew. We will take that suggestion.
I actually put it in this episode, so you might have to go back and listen.
Is a full surprise.
Yeah. Okay, so Jason, who comes on our show pretty often from Raven, he sent us a picture of that didgeridoo we were talking about in that interview. And I'm going to post that on the show LinkedIn page here, so you can go check that out. What I want everyone to do is send Jason a message and demand that didgeridoo solo.
I just read this. We have a screen where we have some of our notes. I had no idea that was actually real.
Oh, yeah. That's why we
thought
brought
that was
it up.
just a joke. And we were talking what is a didgeridoo?
I mean, you can make a didgeridoo out of a huge PVC pipe. It's like this big, long pipe. And you blow on it and it goes like.
What does he do with it?
I
mean, what the guy's blowing in on the Ricola commercial?
Well, I mean, that's like the Swiss Alps pipe. I don't know what that's called, but Alpen pipe.
But this is a real thing he's made out of
didgeridoo. Oh no, it's I think he got, I don't know. We'll post the picture.
I want to make one of those to wake up my kids in the morning.
Oh, it'd be incredible. Homeschool. Yeah. It would be
up, boys.
The displacement didgeridoo, displacing them out of bed. So we've got to definitely have to get him to play that for us. So get on LinkedIn. I'll have a link in the show notes to Jason's profile if you're not already friends with him. And you should be anyways, because he's always posting job opportunities and good stuff on there. So the didgeridoo must come. What's next?
All right. We got a message from Chad. It says, I'm getting all caught up on the podcast. I fell behind when I didn't fly for 4+ months. Still barely flying, but I got to say, I love the furlough flute. It cracks me up. I start laughing out loud on the airplane. The only thing better is hearing Max's reaction and him losing it in the background. Keep up the great work.
He did lose it. That was funny. Actually, we've heard a bunch of emails loving your reaction more than anything else.
So, really?
Yeah, I'm going to have to spring something new on you one of these days. Last email is from Nathan. He actually just sent this in today while we were getting ready to record.
Yeah, that's right.
And it sets up perfectly for our topic today. It's a little bit long, so I got to condense. But he said he was in a college aviation interview class, and they had a recruiter come in from Plain Sense, and they were doing practice interviews and asking questions of the different students. So they put him up on the spot, and the recruiter asked the question, "You've reached your overnight and arrived at the hotel to check in. Your captain says, go up to the room and meet me back in 20 minutes for dinner. After a while, you are sitting in the lobby when you see your captain come down the stairs wearing a dress. How do you react?" Most of us have heard this already, but Nathan had not. He was in college, so he probably, was first new to this. He goes, "Now, coming from a Christian university, I knew I was on the hot seat. But at the same time, I can't judge the captain on how they want to dress when not flying. After thinking of how to word my answer to still get a job with the company while not making my professor mad, I came up with the answer of, well, it's not my place to say anything as long as they weren't going against the company policy." The assistant chief pilot smirked. "Who said your captain was a man?" The entire room went quiet, and I knew my face was about as red as a beacon light. After the interview, my professor, a former Delta training captain, said he would have said the same thing I did. That was by far the best interview question I've ever heard.
Suckers.
I mean, I feel like I was told that question a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember it too. I mean, I read this and I was like, oh,
yeah,
I know this one.
This is a classic. So I imagine most of our listeners have already heard that one. But in case you haven't, there, heads up, that's free.
Yeah.
I mean, James gives all this advice. Now, listen to us, Eagle Careers. You've got all the hot new questions.
We're hunting them down.
That's right. So, all right. Well, thanks for all the great email. If you have something to say in the mailbag, it's info@215podcast.com. I was very disappointed. No full-time professional contract pilots wrote in yet to talk about what the right of first refusal and those different policies and what that's like right now.
Yeah, no kidding. I thought that would be a heated subject.
I want to hear from folks who are professional contract pilots right now, because that's got to be a crazy marketplace right now. So shoot us an email, hit us up on the socials. We would love to hear from you. Joining us on the line today, we've got Dr. Faulkner. He's an AME based in Atlanta. He consults with Harvey Watt, our sponsor, and some other air carriers. He sees over 4,000 patients a year, and wanted to call today, Dr. Faulkner, to discuss some online rumors we've seen. If you've been around 4,000 pilots a year, then you know pilots love to gossip and spread rumors, right?
Oh, yeah. Heard them all.
That's right. So we saw something online we thought we should probably address, and it had to do with the COVID vaccine trials that are coming up. And someone said, hey, if you participate in a vaccine trial, it could have some consequences with your FAA medical. So can you talk a little bit about the vaccine trials and how that could affect your FAA medical?
Well, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all on this, because this is rumor aside. Even prior to this, I would get calls from pilots who would want to participate in a study for a vaccine or for medication, and would ask, what would it, how would it impact their medical certification? And bluntly, as you know, pilots are held to a higher standard,
right,
and very rigorous on what they can and cannot take. All in an effort to minimize, incapacitation of the pilot while flying. So regrettably, when it comes down to studies where a medication or vaccine has not been approved by the FAA, the FAA does not want pilots participating and flying. It's just too much risk. There's no knowledge about both the short and long-term side effects of these vaccines or medications. And because of that, the FAA just says, stay clear of those until first the FDA, Federal Drug Administration, has approved these vaccines or medications. And then after the FAA has had a chance with their internal board to review the vaccine and medications and determine, yes, pilots can take the vaccine or the medication so long as they don't experience any side effects.
That's an interesting point. So you're saying even when the FDA certifies it and maybe your neighbor who's an accountant can go get the vaccine, that doesn't mean that you as a pilot can go out and get it right away.
Correct. Right, spot on. Even though, and this happens with, we'll go aside with the vaccines, but all these medications you'll see advertised coming out, wonderful medications and all that, but even though they've been approved by the FDA, they still have to be approved by the FAA before airmen can take them.
And I imagine ALPA and other bodies are going to be broadcasting that information as those vaccines actually start to be approved and coming to market.
Yeah, I think, again, with this vaccine, the trials going on, et cetera, once it is approved, that's fantastic. But, again, the FAA may have restrictions on it. Let's say there is a COVID vaccine that is approved after trials, et cetera. The FAA may still say, okay, airmen who have that vaccine may not be able to fly for so long. It depends. I would not be, if I was an airman, I would not necessarily be the first to line up for that vaccine once it's approved. But I definitely would say you cannot participate in these trials just because there's just not the knowledge we need on how it can impact performance in the cockpit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And here's a question, and obviously we don't know what the vaccines are going to be yet, but are there ever problems with vaccines and other drug interactions that airmen might have to be aware of?
Yes. And again, the same could be said for medications. Medication interaction, adverse reactions there, it's absolutely possible. So, you'll see, certainly with medications and vaccines that are already approved, often the physicians or pharmacists should know, hey, should not take this with this class of medication or whatever. And so that's other things to be studied and considered by the FAA for allowing these things to be administered to airmen.
I can imagine there are a lot of pilots right now who are anxious to get a vaccine because they are exposed to the general public, many of them 3-4 days a week. So it sounds like it's going to take some patience and you got to really be careful.
Yeah, please. Vaccines will come, but we also have to be careful. Obviously, it could be a real game changer with approach to COVID, but just given the distinct class of airmen, the medical standards they have to maintain, you just have to hold off on doing that. Either fly and hold off on getting the vaccine, or get the vaccine and hold off on flying. That's really how it looks.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. Now, Rob Alston assured us that you would have the exact date the vaccine would be ready for the general public. So go ahead and share that, Dr. Faulkner.
Well, yeah, let me check the goods. Yeah, it would be lovely. And I, if I can just get on my side panel, my soapbox here.
Sure.
With vaccines, you have to be careful. I mean, this COVID thing, obviously devastating health-wise, economic-wise, but I'm old enough to remember things like the swine flu vaccine back in the Ford and Carter administration. And they rolled out that swine flu only to find out it was causing neurological symptoms and problems there. So, again, they want to get the vaccine out, but they still want to make sure the benefit outweighs the risk. And so it'll get there, I'm sure, at some point, but we just can't run into it, can't race into it.
That's really great perspective. I really appreciate that. I've kind of have the same opinion. Like I would be very wait and see. I still won't get LASIK because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wait and see because I don't want to mess with it. But yeah, I know there are probably a lot of folks out there that are anxious. So I think that's really great advice. And Dr. Faulkner, one other thing we try and reiterate to folks whenever we talk about medical issues. I know Rob Alston always tells us the most important thing is before you take a new medication, before you change anything, it's always the most important to call somebody and get some advice. So I'm sure you experience this a lot with your patients. Can you talk a little bit about some of the resources available and how you handle that with your patients?
Sure. Well, the good news is a vast majority of medications are approved for use by airmen, so long as they don't cause side effects. So again, for majority of medications, if it is approved, we typically advise, if this is the first time you've ever taken it, take it, wait at least 24 hours to make sure you're not in that very small group that has side effects. And if all is well, you can take the medication and fly. But, it's the risk or I guess the concern is knowing those medications and those that are not approved. And so, yes, absolutely. ALPA Aeromedical, also known as Aviation Medical Advisory Services, AOPA, Aircraft Owner and Pilot Association, both have pages that can give you their medication database that you can put in there the generic name of the medication or the trade name, and they can quickly pop up if it's approved or not. And often it'll include in some cases, some medications that will be approved, but it will also reference that you have to get clearance from the FAA after a certain wait period and submitting documentation. But those are good sources to go to. Now, I will say there's a disclaimer when you go to those pages, and it's basically saying that you're taking a risk when you're reviewing this of, yes, I found out this medication's approved, and you were stating that you don't have a side effect from it there. But you also have to remember that it can be the underlying condition that could be more of a hazard to flying than the medication itself. And so the FAA jokingly does, well, they do have a list out there that they have for their aeromedical offices, their flight surgeons. It's affectionately called the list that doesn't exist. And it's the reason they don't publish this for the airmen out there to see is because it's that condition that could be the issue, not the medication. So the example I use is, let's say someone has a sinus infection and they're on an antibiotic. Well, certainly that antibiotic may be approved, but it could be the underlying condition that's more at risk. A sinus infection with its risk for blockage that could cause dizziness, hearing loss, etc., is far riskier than, let's say, a skin infection, a wound that you're on antibiotics to treat that. So, contact these folks at AOPA, ALPA, and contact your aviation medical examiners. Again, they get these questions a lot. And then finally, scary as it may be, but believe it or not, contact the FAA. The regional offices especially will have access to this list. But, I will throw my name and number out there. If your listenership wants to give my office a call, we get these questions all the time.
Right.
And we know it. And if we don't, we can certainly look it up for you and let you know if it's approved, any required downtime, et cetera.
Well, Dr. Faulkner, we appreciate your perspective on this. I think walking away from this, I definitely understand. Hey, I'm going to wait as long as I can and wait for the FAA to say something about any vaccine that comes out and be patient as long as possible.
Right. For a majority of us, I'll just say that this COVID thing, this virus there, will hit us there and we'll survive it there. But obviously a vaccine will help for the overall public health.
Right.
And so, if you do get the symptoms, certainly the CDC has great information. The key thing, though, is treat the symptoms. Don't push yourself. This is not the time to, it's just a minor cold, I can push through it. Throttle back from flying, go home, get the rest you need, push the fluids, treat the symptoms. You should come out of this just fine.
It's well said. We appreciate that. Dr. Faulkner, if folks want to get in touch with your office, if they have any questions on the vaccine stuff or any other medical questions, how can they get a hold of you guys?
Well, sure. Our phone number, main office phone number in Atlanta is 404-565-0870.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. It's a joy to participate, and please let me know how I can be of service to you and your troops.
All right. All right, well, thanks to our friends at Harvey Watt for setting up that conversation with Dr. Faulkner. Of course, Harvey Watt is the largest provider of loss of medical insurance and pilot life insurance. Visit harveywatt.com to get all the information. They can supplement the plans you already have. They can give you new coverage. There's almost no exclusions for professional pilots when it comes to life insurance. I've got a policy. I love it. harveywatt.com.
All right. Next, we have our Lindsay H interview. Super interesting interview. Stick around. Listen to the end. Some pretty funny stuff in there. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties with our service we use to interview people remotely. It has video and it records it. So we have a backup and stuff. And it just stopped mid-interview. And we restarted computers, restarted everything, and could not get it to work. So we finished it up on the phone, which is fine. It's just if you notice
You're going to notice a change
in the
not
way
to
the
our
audio
voices.
sounds, it's no
I
big
mean,
deal, but
yeah.
just so you don't wonder.
What the heck?
Think that we're the amateurs we actually are.
Right. Exactly.
It wasn't us.
So with that being said, here is our interview with Lindsay Howell. Joining us on the program today, we have Lindsay Howell. She is a career coach specializing in advising female professional pilots.
Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, guys. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you, Lindsay. We've got a ton of stuff we want to talk about. And the timing for this interview is perfect because Girls in Aviation Day is coming up here in the second half of September. So I thought, what a great time to talk to you, talk about women getting into aviation and how you can help them.
Lindsay, why don't you just tell us about your aviation story, how you ended up here.
Yeah, so I've had so much fun in aviation. Initially, I wanted to be a helicopter pilot in the Coast Guard. You know, everyone saw Top Gun and wanted to fly jets, but I saw Goose in the water and being rescued by the Coast Guard helicopter, and that's what I wanted to do. And I saw a helicopter take off at my school in the second grade, and I was just mesmerized watching that thing take off and fly away. So I knew when I was 7, I wanted to be a pilot, and I tried to sign up to the military, but I just couldn't quite make that commitment. And everyone said fixed wing, go get your fixed wing rating. So I did that, and I had really supportive parents who, actually my guidance counselor laughed at me in high school when I said I wanted to be a pilot. And so that was one of my first setbacks, but my parents were just so cool and just, helped me, keep taking it step by step. I wanted to go to college too and get an aviation degree. So I went to Kansas State University, and I got the whole experience there, college, got to go fly in between the math and English class, and just really loved it. So I never really had a desire to go airlines or corporate or, fly for the wildlife, fish and game. I just wanted to fly. Right. And so I think because of my openness and adventure, I've had a really cool career. One of my first jobs was for an avionics company in California, and they would work on the aircraft and ask me to go test fly them afterwards. And I would always ask the mechanic, like, which one of you worked on this airplane? And then I would invite him to go flying with me because then that was my safety.
That's smart.
Then, he's willing to fly with me. Then I knew the aircraft was safe. So that was kind of one of my first jobs was
That's a good tip.
Doing that.
I got a question for you, Lindsay. Did you have a relative or a mentor when you first started out that was a pilot in your family or something like that?
Nope. I am definitely, part of that group of pilots who grew up without having any strong role models in aviation. After I graduated from college, though, funny story, my dad had kind of had a couple flights under his belt from 30 years prior. So after college, I actually ended up teaching my dad how to fly. Oh. And that was a lot of fun too. I mean, the guy who taught me how to drive and how to ski, and eventually I got to teach him how to fly. And so we were kind of a little opposite in that area.
That's interesting. You don't hear that one too often.
I know. I'm trying to think if I could teach my
I know. I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, I wonder how that
dad?
would go.
Yeah. I don't know.
I was not, I was pretty hard on him. I was not soft with him. So he learned early on to bring me my Starbucks order. So every morning he'd show up with my double mocha grande from the airport. So
buttered you up.
Jeez, I don't think I ever had to bring my CFI coffee.
Yeah, right.
You should have.
So after school, you did a little flight instructing, little test piloting. It sounds like what was next?
Oh, geez. So I started doing some charter flights, and I was living in Monterey, California, and I just started, one guy said, hey, I have a Baron. Can you fly this Baron for me to the middle of California is called the Salad Bowl, and it was for a tomato company, or tomato processing, canning company. And so I would fly the Baron to the Central Valley. I started flying right seat and a Hawker and a King Air. I just did these contract flights. At one time, I think I had 4 different jobs lined up, and I could work as much as I wanted to. It was great. I would go fly in the morning, surf in the afternoon. I was single. It was the glory days. I never said no to a flight. It was a lot of fun. So somewhere after that, I got a call from a guy named Mark Marshall asking me to fly a Citation 10 right seat. And I had 1,100 hours at the time, right? Did not belong in a Citation 10. But the line guys at the jet center there said, call Lindsay, she'll help. And he said, great, what's her last name? And they were like, we don't know. Go ask the CSRs. So I flew a Citation 10 for a while. And then when she sold that aircraft, flying a Citation 10 is really fun. It's really fast and you fly really high and you kind of see the curvature of the earth. But after a while, I was kind of bored. Okay, we just sit here for 6-7 hours.
But you're going 9-2. It's so cool.
Yeah. I know. You're flying over Southwest and the airlines and you're passing them. And
have you been in a 10? I've never been in a 10 even. No.
Yeah, it is a fun jet. But at that time I thought, what do I really want to do? What could be fun? If I could pick anything in aviation, what would it be? And I thought about flying seaplanes in a warm place with happy people. That was my epitome of the best flying job out there. So the Citation 10 was sold, and I talked to my best friend who was a Southwest pilot, and she said, I know a guy who is flying in the Caribbean, and let me put you in touch with him. And so I spoke with him for a while, and he said, yeah, I already had my single engine seaplane. So he said, go get your multi-engine seaplane and come on down. So I went and got my multi-engine seaplane rating, and they were not hiring at the time. So I didn't have a job. It's 2007, 2008. I didn't have a job. And so I sold my car and my skis and everything. And I went to the Central America and kind of went backpacking by myself for a couple of months. And
wow, that's interesting.
Did you bring your surfboard?
No.
Where in Central America were you?
I started in Belize and I went all the way down to Panama. So I hit Guatemala, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama.
And you're just waiting for a phone call to go to the Caribbean to fly the turboprop.
I did actually. They called me. They called me while I was down there and had a Skype interview. But I said, sorry, I'm in Central America now. I can't come. And I know.
I'm in this hostel now. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I'm in Honduras.
9 people. Oh, man.
It gets worse. I turned them down again. So I finished my backpacking trip and I went back to Monterey. And I was kind of out of money, but I had just enough money to buy a sailboat. And so I bought a sailboat thinking, what? I'll live on my sailboat. Any new flying jobs I could have could go towards, food and whatever. The day I bought my sailboat, Seabourn Airlines called again. And they said, are you ready? We want to offer you a job down here. And I said, gosh, I just bought this sailboat.
Every time with this girl, we call her. She's in Central America. She's got a sailboat.
What's next?
So I said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm just going to do this boating thing for a while. And I didn't know how to sail. I had no idea, but I was going to live on this wooden sailboat. It didn't even have an engine, but I thought, hey. I know, but I woke up the next day and I was like, what have I done? It's 2009. No one has a job. Yeah. And here's my dream flying job. So I called them back and I said, hey, do you guys still need a pilot? And they said, yeah. I said, great, I'll be there in 2 weeks. And they said, what about your boat? And I said, don't worry about my boat. I'll figure it out.
I'm sailing it there. I'll be there in a little bit.
Yeah. As soon as I figure out how to sail, I'll be there. I'm figuring about 2 weeks. As long as I can make it through the Panama Canal, we'll be good.
Yep.
Do I turn right or left after I get out of the canal?
Be lassoing with a rope onto the back of a tanker because it has no motor.
Oh my gosh.
And it's cool. There's a lot of things in common with flying and sailing. The navigating and it's the aerodynamics and a lot of it's very similar. So it's pretty cool.
Right. So what did you? So you sold the sailboat right away and then?
Yeah. So what did you do with the boat?
She still has it. That's the look of somebody that still has
it. No, I sold my boat to my best friend for $1. So she lived on my boat, fell in love with my boat mechanic while I went down to the Caribbean. Well, that's a different story. But anyways, when I came back from the
Hold
Caribbean,
on, you said this boat didn't have an engine.
No.
Yeah, what kind of mechanic is this?
What a deal. All right, we got a lot of ground to cover, Lindsay. We're going to have to circle back to that story later. So you got down there and you start flying for Seaborn. It's funny because I remember as a flight instructor, and everyone was pulling up these pictures on the internet, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to fly these Twin Otters in like the Maldives and all. They'd pull up all these cool pictures and be like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. No one ever did it, but you actually did. So tell us a little bit about the dream.
Yeah, here I am, 25, and it was like, what was going to stop me?
Right.
Here I pull out this crazy idea, and then I just do it. And I look back now, being obviously a mom of 2 kids and kind of have my own anchors in life, and thinking like, wow, like, where does that come from? And I think I was just really fortunate that I feel like I've had a strong personality. I was kind of born with this grit, like, don't tell me no, right? Don't get in my way. And I think that's a really needed trait for female pilots. Because there's a lot of people saying, no, you can't fly. Girls don't fly. Go, be in customer service or a flight attendant. And I think what I figured out with female pilots is that there's just a certain amount of grit that it's in our personality, or we're born with, or we get it from a strong support system. But there's just that tenacity that says, yeah, I want to fly seaplanes in the Caribbean. Okay. And let's go. And I was the only female pilot down there for a long time.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was fun, It was a great job. We would fly sun up to sundown. We were flying from St. Croix to St. Thomas, Vieques, Puerto Rico, Old San Juan, Puerto Rico airport. And, back in the day, Seaborn Airlines was fun. Like, that's all we flew to.
Right.
And now they're kind of, spreading all over the Caribbean and flying Saabs and operating like a real airline.
Right.
But then we talked about we were the pirates of the Caribbean. We were like flying with like the eye patch and the dagger in the mouth. And, like, the rules don't exist for pilots in Alaska and the Caribbean.
So how'd you end up leaving that job?
So, the guy who walked in my resume for me, he was, I ended up, dating him, and he went off to go fly in Afghanistan. And I had some health issues in my family. And so I thought, I just didn't want to be down in the Caribbean. I wanted to be closer to my family. And, a year and a half in the Caribbean flying, in the sunshine and salt water, and it's hard work,
Yeah.
So I moved back home to that wooden boat was calling my name. It was like, hey.
Oh no. We are
did go back to the boat?
Oh no.
Yeah, no, we didn't move back on the boat, but we definitely thought that we would go put that motor on it and learn how to sail it properly. So we did that.
So is this in like the Monterey Harbor area, like where the boat was? Oh, no kidding.
Do you still have this boat?
No, I actually ended up selling it for exactly what I paid for it, which was amazing because it's a wooden sailboat. It's supposed to depreciate its value, and it didn't. So
That's cool.
Oh my gosh.
it worked out. Yeah.
All right. No, keep going. I don't even know how to follow up to this. So many twists and turns. So what happened next?
Yeah. So
It's a stormy night at sea.
And all of a sudden, so with my flying career after that, I went and flew for Jet Suite. They were an up and coming 135 operation. It was a lot of fun. We flew the Phenom 100 pretty much up and down the West Coast, Vegas, and flew a lot of rich and famous people. I call it the Uber of the sky, right? You up your private jet service. We come pick you up and take you to Vegas. And so I did that for a while, upgraded to captain, had a lot of fun, a lot of females there, great company,
Right.
a lot of good experience, good company culture. And then they got the CJ or the CJ3 on the East Coast and expanded to Jet Suite X. After that, gosh, what did I do? Oh, I had babies. That kind of put things on hold for a while. My husband flies at United Airlines, and my trips were 5-day trips, and his were 3 to 4 day trips. And so our thought was, well, then we just high five in the driveway, but that wasn't really how we wanted to have a family. So I took some time off to raise the babies, and now I'm back flying again. I did fly Phenom 100, but they just sold it. They just bought a Lear 45. So I guess I'll be going back to school here pretty soon to learn a new jet. And, so sailboat's gone. We've got kind of a steady life here. Things are calmed down, but, we make it work, and life is fun. So.
Wow,
that's a great story.
Yeah, that is really cool. So let's transition and talk a little bit about how you're starting to help women in the career and doing some coaching. Can you talk a little bit about what that's all about?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely my favorite topic. So baby number 2 comes along, and I'm working at Cage Marshall Consulting. I'm doing interview consulting there for pilots who are, about to get their dream interview at a major airline. And I really love that side of working with pilots. But I also noticed at the time, some pilots, it was like they would just wait to the very last minute to get their interview prep. And they lacked a lot of information. I had one pilot come in and his logbook pages were glued together. There were just so many mistakes. He thought, I'll just glue it together and nobody will notice. Nobody's going to wonder what's in between those pages.
I haven't heard of that strategy. That's good.
I don't recommend it.
Okay.
It makes it look like you're hiding something. But during this process of doing interview consulting, I just realized that there was a lack, that some of the pilots needed a little extra boost in confidence. They didn't know how to present themselves. They didn't know how to talk. They didn't know how to make eye contact or shake hands. Their paperwork wasn't in order. And I talked to my boss, hey, what are we doing here as far as past this 2-hour mock interview? What about creating some kind of course for pilots who need a little extra something? Or if they don't get the job offer, they fail their interviews, then what? Then what do we offer them?
Right.
So my boss said, yeah, go create the course. And then obviously COVID happened, and I kept creating this course thinking, you know what, these flight schools are still flying. There are people on Facebook who are still getting their private pilot's license, and these flight schools are still being they're still flying. A lot of the industry might be hurting, but I noticed that this section over here was going. And so just thinking, in my flight school days, my freshman class had about, 12 female pilots, and only about 3 of us today that I know of are still flying. So what happened? Where did they go? When did they change? Why? And statistically, the FAA put out in December 2019 that according for female pilots, there's only about 13.8% of females are student pilots. 4.5% of those females are ATP. So between 4.5% to 13% to me, that's a big number.
Right.
Sure.
Student pilots to ATP. And, I think they say about 6% is average for female pilots. And so that age-old question, why are there only 6% of female pilots? I had this an epiphany one day thinking, well, wait a second, what makes the 6% of female pilots so special? What do they have in common? What are their traits? What's their support system? Do they have mentors? What's their confidence? What do they all share? Because, that 6% might be low, but these women are they're amazing. They all possess something in common that I want to figure out what that is. So I went on to have this goal to interview 50 female pilots and ask those questions about what made them all so successful. And my hope is to take all of those answers and teach them to those student pilots and ensure that they don't quit, ensure that they make it to the commercial ATP level, give them the resources and tools that I found during those interviews so that they can, be successful, that when it gets hard, that they know where to turn so that they don't just quit. And so I created this program that works on the whole pilot. It works on the internal, how they talk to themselves, positive self-talk, belly breathing. Step 2 is the external, how they present themselves, how's their confidence, right? And teaching, because you want to have a pilot who exudes confidence. Step 3 is the application. How are they studying? How are they setting goals? How are they passing tests? How are they not wasting money in 100 hours getting their private pilot's license? So helping them with that process.
Mm-hmm.
The 4th step is the documentation. helping them with their logbooks, the transcripts, all those things that they're going to need to know when they get to that level of interviewing at the majors that no one's going to tell them until they're doing interview prep the day before, keeping track of those speeding tickets, or, if you want to go to Delta, then your GPA matters, right? And then the fifth step is just the mentorship. So basically I've taken all of my 20 years of knowledge and all these different fields of aviation, I've kind of put it into the 6-week program to help people at the beginning so that they don't drop out and quit. So that's where I'm at today with this coaching program, and it's just so much fun. I'm taking a group of female pilots through now, and it's something I wish I had when I was a student pilot.
Right. And you didn't mention step 7 about the boat ownership. Is that a special add-on course that you do that's extra for the graduates?
That's a 5-year plan. Like, we'll all go to the Caribbean and have that retreat.
Wooden only, no motor, please. Thank you.
That's right.
So I have a question. So with the interviews that you did do, and I'm sure you asked the same questions of everybody to kind of get an idea of what was it special about that group of ladies? Did you identify something?
Okay, you're talking about the 50 women she interviewed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say that they're all badass. Like, some of these women, I talked to the first Black Navy pilot. I've talked to the only female pilot who flies a C-46. Some of these are really incredible women, but some of the biggest things that I had found was that most of them have all had some type of mentorship, some support system. That doesn't always have to be a formal, you're my mentor, yes, I'm your mentee, yes, I'll help you with your career, I'll guide you. Sometimes it's just having a roommate who someone is able to draw that support and trust in, but they do identify that person as a mentor. And you look at statistics on mentorship, and it's huge. Like, 70% of Fortune 500 companies have mentorship for their employees. Most of the major airlines have a mentorship when you start at that airline. They give you a mentor. And so if these people think it's big, then I think we all should too at the smaller level. So that was one big takeaway that I found. A lot of them have a strong support system from their dads, is amazing. So I don't know what Freud would say about that particularly, but it's one of those things where I want to say, hey, dads, it matters how you raise your daughters and what you teach them to do. And are you giving them trucks or Barbies or both? Are you taking them out to the airport or to the race car drag shows? Are you exposing them to all those different facets and saying, yeah, go sit up front of the airplane? That was another thing with my interviews too. A lot of these women said, hey, I want to be a flight attendant. And their dad was like, why not sit up front instead? And they're like, oh, wait, I could do that? Yeah, here, I'll buy your first flight lesson. That was a big recurring theme in these interviews. Was the dad was, here's a packet of 20 glider flights. That there was a very common thread. So, what I say to that now is just if you're a dad or have, if you're influential to young girls, that holds a lot. And
so when you talk about almost 70% of the female pilots had a father that was influential, were most of them pilots, or was it more of them just exposing them to the different possibilities?
About half were pilots. Some worked in aviation, some worked in baggage or customer service. And so these girls did grow up at the airport and some aspect or another, but not always. I mean, sometimes it's just having that strong dad saying, no, you can do it.
Right. Let me ask you a question about, I'm just kind of cheating here a little bit off of your survey that you talked about imposter syndrome. And that's something that I think Max and I have been having some conversations with some other female pilots, especially one that was a bush pilot up in Alaska. And from our perspective, it can seem like, oh, it's so easy for a female pilot to get a job sometimes because there are just some opportunities for them that may help them stand out, maybe versus some other candidates. But when we were talking to this other pilot the other day, she mentioned, well, maybe getting the job might be easier in some cases, but once you're there, you have to deal with some things that a lot of male pilots don't have to deal with, about passengers maybe questioning your ability or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was taken aback by that. And like Dylan said, I think a lot of people think, oh, women pilots have it easy and they relate it to the airlines and maybe some sort of diversity quota. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. It's just kind of what has always been the lore out there. And then we talked to her, and also with Aubrey too.
Yeah.
So we talked to her, both female pilots, and it really brought to light some things that I've never had to even think about, and stuff that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it's a different job in a lot of ways, I think, for these female pilots, especially, in the Alaska bush, maybe more so than a male or female pilot at United Airlines. That might be a lot more parallel. And then even with some of the stuff that we've seen, not with people with the podcast, but just around our airport, about women and how sometimes they've actually been put in a disadvantage because of dynamics of, a single pilot or a single airplane, 2-pilot flight operation. I'll tell you, a lot of times the lead pilot who's hiring, his wife may have a hard time knowing that he's going to hire maybe a younger female pilot that he's going to be on 100 overnights a year with. And that's tough. Like, there's nothing that the female candidate can do about that, right? I mean, it's interesting. We've all these different things that come to light we never really thought about.
Yeah, and that's a nice part of being a guy in aviation, right? Is you guys don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I love that thought of females have it easier, but what you guys don't see is that we're working 10 times harder.
Right.
Yeah.
We've had to put in a lot of extra work to feel that we're equal with you guys, that you guys don't do that. I mean, so many of my interviews, I talked about confidence. And my question is, where does your confidence come from? And the answer was usually, oh, I fake it. And then the question turns to, compared to guys wake up in the morning and they're like, oh yeah, I could fly that, no problem, right? Females, we got to kind of like look it over, think about it, be like, yeah, I wonder if I could. Okay, well, maybe I'll start reading the books. Maybe I'll go on a flight. Oh, that's not so bad. I think I could do this. Okay. And someone says, oh yeah, you're a really good pilot. Oh, there's a little bit of confidence. And then there's a check ride, and then I pass, and then I've got the confidence and I keep going.
Right.
But guys, like, you guys wake up dripping confidence,
And I think that kind of brings it full circle with having a mentor, because that's the person that closes that gap. And especially when it's easy to quit, right? When you're working on getting to the point where you're going to solo or on your private, it's a lot easier to throw in the towel at that point than it is a lot later when you have a lot more money and time invested and everything else. And I think that's probably, I don't know what the statistics are of women that start towards a private pilot certificate but then never finish, right? That one might be interesting too, because if they don't have that person to keep pushing them along when things get hard or discouraging, then that's, I bet a lot is lost at that stage of training.
Yeah. I had a flight back to imposter syndrome. I had a flight at Jet Suite, and we're at, it's a smaller jet. We load bags. We meet the passengers in the FBO lobby. We walk them out to the airplane, and I'm loading this one family's bags, and we're having great conversation, and we're chit-chatting and stuff. And I load their bags, and they get on the aircraft, and I walk out after them and shut the door, and they look at me and they say, "Oh, you're coming with us?" And I said, "Yeah, if you want to get home today, I'm your pilot. So I hope I'm coming with you." And, and then I'm like, now I give you my safety briefing and ask if you want to drink. And I get up front and I start the jet, and here we go. But I think those are the comments that lead to imposter syndrome, because then I'm thinking like, wait, do I belong here? Like, did I really pass that type ride? Did I really work my butt off to earn this seat? And so I have to work really hard. And I think that imposter syndrome, I always think of Leonardo DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can, when he's like pretending to be an airline pilot and thinking like, how long until I get found out, right? When someone knocks on the door and be like, "Ma'am, you don't belong here," So yeah, pilots have a lot of extra baggage to deal with.
Sure. And that reminds me of when I think I was like maybe when I was first at the regional airline or first got into business aviation, and it was kind of the same thing, but it was more thinking you're too young to be, that flying the jet
only
or whatever. And I think that's sort of the same thing, but it doesn't last very long.
I was going to say, yeah, because it's very difficult for me to relate to that, but I do remember getting those comments in the beginning when I was young, like, oh, you're too young to be flying, or something like that. And you just
exactly.
think up something. I think it was like, oh, I got a note from my mom, so I'm okay. Like that, but that was like, you just make a joke. But I mean, I would deal with that maybe once or,
Yeah, but you can tell too that strong women like yourself and Liz too, when she talked about it, who was our Alaskan bush pilot that we interviewed, she goes, yeah, you just kind of get used to it after a while, and just, she would have some sort of witty comment and then just kind of like you did and say, all right, shut the door. You want a drink, and just kind of get on with it. Right.
Unfortunately, yeah. I remember the first time walking out to my citation 10 and this group of pilots, these group of guy pilots, they say, since when did they start letting females fly?
Oh, wow.
In my head, I was thinking 1910, actually, but I didn't know what to say. And I think you kind of start getting used to, like, you either ignore it or you deal with it, but you move on.
I was thinking about the other day, my perspective is maybe different than other people, because when I first started flying when I was 14, and my flight instructor was a woman that was friends with my parents. And so I wonder if my perspective is different than other pilots because of kind of that initial taste of aviation kind of was associated with that. But I don't think that's probably not the normal. That's probably...
No, well, I can tell you myself too, like being at South, I haven't flown with a woman pilot. And like, I think one time at the regional airlines, that's it. And I was like at Southwest, I'm like, wow, this will be like a new experience for me to fly with a female captain, because I'd never had, and I still haven't. It just hadn't, the stars hadn't aligned just right on a trip yet. But yeah, it's going to be something that's new to me. I had female flight instructors back in college, but that's about has been my only exposure, which, I don't really have an opinion of one way or another. I'm actually kind of interested because it'll just be something different than going to, San Diego for the 500th time.
Right.
So,
well, I think that's what's so interesting about what you're doing, Lindsay, because if you think about a typical, like you're talking about the interview prep or maybe a career coach that you hire as a male pilot, you're not thinking about some of those other aspects of the confidence and the imposter syndrome. So to be able to have a coach that's going to be able to address and prepare people for those things, and having been exposed to the industry and kind of understanding what you're going to encounter out there, I think that's a really interesting service to provide.
Yeah, I think it's definitely needed. And, my big goal is to increase it 6% of female pilots. I would love to, really work on helping female pilots succeed. Aviation is a lot of fun, but it's not always easy. And I think having a mentorship or just having more exposure could really add to that.
Speaking of getting some more exposure, because it doesn't sound like you're not busy enough already, can you tell us a little bit about the book you wrote?
Yeah. So, that book started when I was getting my multi-engine seaplane rating. There was this airport dog. It was this old dog who was just always at the airport. And this was down in Florida. And so it kind of just sparked this story for me. And I had this children's book in my head for a long time. And after my first daughter was born, it kind of became this passion project where I wasn't flying, but I still wanted to inspire females about aviation. And gender bias has started at the age of 5. So when girls are 5, they're already thinking, boys are smarter and girls can't be pilots, right? I need to, do interior design or whatever. And so it was just this other passion project of mine to write this story, and I self-published it. I raised money on Kickstarter and fundraised enough money to self-publish this book. And it was basically just for fun, but it was one more way to get female pilots out there, because at the time I could only find like 4 books that had anything to do with a female pilot in an airplane. And didn't even have to be that she was flying, just like in the same book. So I just wanted to really, add that to other ways where girls could see female pilots. I work with Pre-Flight Camp. It's a camp where they offer aviation to girls ages 11 to 14. And one of their big things is you can't be what you can't see. And so, that's one more thing, that if you're seeing female pilots in books when you're 5 years old before you get to kindergarten, and you're seeing that it's possible, let's change some lives, so.
All right, well, we've got some other questions for you, Lindsay, but before we leave the survey, any final thoughts on what you learned there?
Yeah, I think after interviewing 50 female pilots, I realized that there's just a certain badass breed of female pilot out there who they're tenacious, they're determined, they're not going to quit at any cost. Even if they wanted to quit, they're not going to. A lot of them, what else would they do other than fly? And so they keep working hard. And I really admire the women I interviewed, and I have such a huge respect for these female pilots who have made such a successful career for themselves. So just another shout out to those ladies who I was able to interview, and I loved every single interview. So it was a great journey.
Yeah, I think that's going to be...
That's a great idea, actually, to try and figure out what they had in common. So
yeah. Well, before the interview, we were out chatting. All of us have young children under the age of 10, which mixes really well with aviation. I highly recommend it to all pilots. Yeah, exactly. So I was just curious, when you're coaching a female pilot that's looking at becoming a professional pilot, there's different segments of the industry, right? And some segments are going to be more friendly to a female pilot who's thinking about maybe having kids versus some other segments. So, for example, maybe being an airline pilot might be a little bit easier versus if you're at a Part 91 2-pilot operation, there's going to be some more challenges there. Do you ever talk to your clients about that and coach them? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I have 2 answers for that question. Was that came up more during the interviews about 50% of the women I interviewed are married to pilots, and about 42% of them all had kids. So it was definitely a common topic we talked about was marrying pilots and being a pilot with kids. And even at the airline, sometimes that's not always the easiest route either, because you want to have the schedule of the seniority pilots when you're a mom, and so it's kind of flipped. A lot of the times, the older captains that I spoke with who have kids have that cush schedule, but they really had to work hard at the beginning when they were having kids. So another thing that I think I really want to talk about is that, people think there's 2 routes in aviation. It's corporate or it's airline. And, that's just not the case. There are so many opportunities in aviation. And I think that being a mom or a parent who is interested in flying or being a pilot, there's a lot of other jobs you could do where you can be home at night. That may not just be, the Part 91 or 121. And I think that it's important to look at those other avenues. There's temporary jobs, seasonal jobs, flying fires. There's contract gigs overseas. There's, customs, wildlife. When I was living in Monterey, California, popular flight departments out there were in agriculture. Well, those guys fly Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. When they're needing to go somewhere, it's during business hours, and they want to be home at night too. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. I think it's just, getting creative. And I know you guys talk a lot about networking on this show, and that's a huge buzzword of networking and seeing what kind of jobs exist. And making it work for your schedule, make that life you want. It's totally possible.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy with kids. I think we've all learned that, but you're going to have to make some sacrifices, and you're going to have to miss some first steps and baseball games and other things. And that unfortunately just comes with the territory of this this industry. But I know for myself, when I was a young pilot getting going, I just didn't really consider a lot of that. And
Sure.
so as a male, it seems like once you kind of get down there, it's just easier for you to say, well, I'm going to keep flying. And it just seems much more challenging as a mother to be able to find that balance. I think especially if you're at a really small flight department and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to have to step away for a certain amount of time. That's got to be another challenge that female pilots have to deal with that most male pilots don't.
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of caretaking falls on females, whether it's kids or older parents or someone with a disability. Like females, we carry the brunt of that. And that's not always fair or easy, but it's definitely, it happens. You know?
Like she was saying, I think at the beginning of our career, we never saw everything in between. And then now I've seen, women who have what they refer to as their mommy job. And, she flew for the state of Department of Transportation in Arizona and flew like a turbine commander around. It was all day trips, Monday through Friday. She was home every night. Like no exceptions, unless I think the airplane broke or something.
They are out there.
And there are more and more jobs like that I've become aware of over the years. So it can be done. Just got to get creative.
But I think that's another great value of having a mentor, especially a female mentor who has been through that and can put those ideas on the radar for somebody who maybe is young, just getting started. And those considerations aren't even on their mind at the time. So,
yeah, absolutely. With my children's book, Finding Amelia, I don't even think I said the title before, but it's Finding Amelia. And I did this book reading for a second grade class. And the biggest takeaway from those kids was that I was a mom and a pilot. They're like, you can do both? Like, how is this possible? But these 7, 8-year-olds were amazed that, you could grow up and do two things. You could have kids and something else. So once again, I think it's just changing that story, for kids and females and whoever else needs to open up some bigger dreams.
Yeah. That's well said. All right, Lindsay. Well, this is my favorite part of every interview, when we ask our guest for a good aviation story. And you've already given us a lot. I mean, just from the little taste you've given us earlier, I'm sure you've got quite a few seaplane stories. I don't know.
I like to put in a request for the seaplane story.
Yeah. What do you got for us?
Use your discretion.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It's so fun. I met my husband flying seaplanes. And so before the show, I was going over some of my seaplane stories. And I was like, well, can I tell him this one? He's like, no, don't tell him that one. Tell him this one. And I'm like, well, what if I told him that one? Is that one illegal? Or he goes, yeah, I don't tell him that one either.
Statute of limitations.
I know, right? Like 7 years.
Yeah.
No, that's for my parents. But, one of the best things about flying seaplanes is, besides at one moment you're an airplane and the next second you're a boat.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. But you have just this freedom to pretty much take off and land wherever and whenever you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't have your told card out there of your takeoff and landing distances. You don't really know how much water you need to take off or to land in. And one of my first times flying out of the St. Thomas Harbor, which is notorious for huge cruise ships to be docked in this harbor. And I'm talking like 2 to 3 at a time. And in the middle of the St. Thomas Harbor is another island called Water Island. And so it's this U-shaped harbor. And taking, when you come into land, you land through the cut heading towards the dock. And, once you hit the water, you stop pretty quickly and go into reverse, and it's pretty easy. And then you just kind of like taxi up to the dock like a boat, and it's no problem. You load up the passengers, taxi out, and it must have been my first time taking off. And this cruise ship is backing up at the same time. We're, on the step of the seaplane, we're taking off, and we stay in ground effect for a little bit, and this huge cruise ship is like backing up slowly, and we're taking off slowly. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to hit that cruise ship. I'm like looking at the captain thinking like, are we good? Like, are we fine here? Are we going to clear this thing? And it's very scary because you don't really have, your safety limitations on a normal airport environment.
Right.
And, luckily we, took off and turned in time. And it's funny because it was like a Disney cruise ship and the horn plays, once you wish upon a star. And so the horn's playing this lovely melody. And here I'm thinking that we're just going to like slam into and people are like waving off the deck,
And Mickey Mouse is out there. You think,
Jesus, take the wheel.
We're going to slam to these poor old nice people on their Disney cruise.
there's got to be a great photo of this out there somewhere.
There's got to be.
Oh man. Yeah, it was definitely a trip. And, obviously the more experience you have, you get used to how much water you need for your takeoff distance. And
I can't imagine the learning curve, because I remember starting out kind of my first professional flying job. I was so far behind the airplane, those first flights, just on an airport environment, what I'm used to. So I can't imagine doing all that plus adding all of this traffic and harbors and everything else. That's going to be.
Oh yeah. And animals, right? I mean, we're talking dolphins. We would often see whales. My seaplane check ride was spent circling a mom and a baby whale for the majority of the check ride. So yeah, then you add in a whole different environment of the sea life. So
wow, we're gonna do
sketchy.
Turns around a whale. Eights on whales. When you're flying, it's all VFR, right? Is there any instrument flying, or is it pretty much all low level? And
yeah, for the most part. I mean, we would definitely have storms, and we would have to, navigate around and wait for them to take off. But yeah, it's mostly 500 feet above the ocean, under the clouds, dock to dock.
Right.
So
that's so cool. All right, Lindsay, I have a very important question. This one was debated a lot when I was at the airlines, and I have not been at the airlines for quite a while, but there was always a hot debate about female pilot uniforms, the necktie versus that little like loopy neck thing. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Where do you stand on that? How do you advise your clients? This is the information we need to know.
Yeah, let's get to the bottom of it.
Zipper tie.
Yeah. Yes. Good. I told you.
What is that thing called? The little loop thing?
I have no idea.
I've seen like two people wear it, and I was just like, I don't know. Well, I'm glad you're correctly mentoring the next generation so that they understand the zip tie.
In the Caribbean, we could just wear our cargo shorts, boat shoes, and our pilot shirt, no tie.
Right.
So I'd say if you have a problem with the tie, go to a place where you don't need to wear it. So
I remember at American Eagle, I went down there, and on the ATR, the ATRs had a San Juan. That was like it actually was a separate airline because it was on its own certificate, but it was a whole nother world. I remember going down there, man, and the Puerto Rican dude on the flight, and he had no tie on, his shirt like unbuttoned uncomfortably low. Yeah. Big gold chain. He's sitting out there, hey, welcome aboard. I'm like, really? I'm pretty sure we work at the same airline. And this is not flying O'Hare, sir. And then I remember we get in the plane, we taxi out, and he taxis onto the yellow chevrons, onto the blast pad to take off. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to. Yeah. Welcome to San Juan.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I thought I was going to go fly there because American Eagle was so big down there flying the ATRs. And I got hired at American Eagle, and I was like the youngest kid in class. I'm like, I'm going to Puerto Rico for sure. I sold my car and everything. I was like ready to go. And then they're like, nope, you're going to LA. So
wow.
Totally. So I thought I was going to live the island life for a year, just like you, a year and a half down there. And, no, not to be.
I really recommend that for a lot of people that there's, you can get in the airlines and have a very wonderful long career. But why not go have some fun along the way? I mean, there's so many fun jobs out there. I have a girlfriend getting furloughed from United, and she's going to fly in Africa. And it's like, why not? There's a lot out there. Do it young, and it's not going to hinder you getting hired at an airline one day. Like, my experience is that they want that diversity.
Yeah.
So diversity isn't just, your background as a person, but your background in aviation is huge too. You bring a lot to the table that way. So collect the experiences.
That's what we've said before. In a tell me about a time story, they don't want to hear for the 5,000th time when you're flying the CRJ 200 and,
No.
they want to hear about flying in the bush of Africa or something. So.
And that's what we've been advising folks right now, especially flight instructors that are maybe thought they were going to get hired at the regionals or going to make that next step. And now things are probably on hold. Like, go do an adventure job. And especially like what we were talking about earlier, once you have kids, like a lot of that stuff gets taken off the table.
Yeah.
usually.
She goes, why not? I'm like, I'll tell you 3 reasons why not.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lindsay, if folks are interested in talking to you, getting some more information about services you provide,
Or your book.
Yeah. Or they want to read your book, can you give us some information on your contact info?
Yeah, sure. So my website is my name, LynseyHowell.com, and Lindsay is Lynsey, Howell, HOWELL.com. And I offer a complimentary, phone call just to check in and see if we click. And so you can schedule it on my website too. Check it out. I talk about my 5-step program and the interviews on there as well. Obviously, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all of those, I'm pretty active. I even have a couple videos on YouTube, right? I'm doing like these 2-minute videos, online interviewing, some tips and tricks there. So that's kind of up and going. And my book is girlsgoflying.com. So you can buy a book there off PayPal, and I'll even sign it for you and address it to your kids if you want.
Now, any sailing tips on your YouTube channel?
Any boat purchasing and selling tips. What's your secret there?
Okay.
I think that's what the listeners really want to know.
Sailing for Dummies. My husband got the Sailing for Dummies book, and we would go out on my boat, and he'd read the book and say, okay, pull that green line. And I'd pull the green line. No, not that one. And we would, we figured it out ourselves. And then we started inviting friends who we thought knew how to sail to come sailing with us to teach us something. And they're like, we don't know how to sail. We just here for the adventure. And
that's funny. You say that. That's how I learned to sail, because we were going to the Turks and Caicos on a work trip. And I remember right before we took off, I downloaded a book on Kindle. It was like Introduction to Sailing or something. And I read that on the whole 6-hour flight there. And because I knew that our hotel had little catamarans, and I go out there and I sailed the day before and kind of figured out, because it is sort of inherently like aviation in some aspects, as far as, being mindful of the wind and everything else. And so I go back the next day and it's blowing, and we go to check out sailboats, and the guy goes, "You sailed before, man?" And I go, yeah, of course I have. And so we go out there, and right on what's the beach, Grace Bay. It's like, the best beach in the world. There's millions of people out there, and I'm out there ripping on this thing, and I come about and just flip. I'm in a little catamaran, and I stood out there, and I'm trying to flip it over back into the wind, which obviously doesn't work. And it was
there's that confidence you were talking about those male pilots have. Yeah, let's go.
Not be willing to quit.
Yeah,
and
of course I
the
sail.
guy was just about to get in the boat to come rescue me, and I finally figured out that I need to do this downwind, and then I got it flipped and came back. And,
see, that's another thing with seaplanes. Seaplane flying, you read the wind a lot, and you get used to, how to use it aerodynamically. So maybe you got to go down, get a seaplane rating, and
it's on the list.
Yeah. I think that's next for me. I just got my tail wheel like last week. So seaplane's next.
Nice.
We all make fun of him, welcome him to manhood and everything else.
Right. Yeah.
You did.
No, I got my tail wheel flying the Twin B. The one and only time I've ever flown tail wheels is on that Twin B. I have the endorsement and everything, but
wow.
I'll never.
There's probably not a lot of people who can say that.
Yeah, tail wheel endorsement on a Twin B. That'd be
that's pretty good.
Sketchy is what it is.
Not recommended. You do not advise your clients to take that path.
No.
Listen to me.
Just because you have endorsement doesn't mean you're checked out.
Just because you read a book on sailing does not mean you can sail. Thank you so much for joining us, Lindsay. We'll have all of your contact information on the show notes and our website, so folks can get a hold of you. And I enjoy following you on Instagram. It's Lynsey_Howell. And you're featuring female pilots that you work with, right, on your page too.
Yeah, every Friday I post a Happy Flight Day post of one of the female pilots that I actually interviewed. So there's some pretty great stories up.
Well, that is encouraging. Thank you for inspiring the next generation of female aviators.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a blast.
Be on guard.
Oh, that was Lindsay H. What a interesting woman in aviation.
What I really like is that she is identifying a very holistic way of doing career coaching and recognizing like, yeah, okay, I can help you with your resume and your application and doing interview technique, but there's more to that, especially for female pilots, like we talked about, when there could be some imposter syndrome stuff and dealing with a lot of the barriers that they have to deal with. So I think that the full circle service that she provides is really cool.
Yeah, certainly hearing her stories and some of the other gals that we've interviewed that even you haven't even heard yet will open your eyes, if you're a male pilot, to some of the things you don't even think about that the female pilots have to deal with on a daily basis versus just trying to get hired. Is a whole nother section. So
we're gonna have to do a follow-up interview. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. Like, she had a sailboat mechanic, but had a sailboat with no engine.
We got to get a pic. We have to get a photo of this all wood sailboat.
Yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover there still.
Yeah, I'm quite intrigued.
All right, that's going to do it for the 21.5 show. It's the show for professional pilots by two
amateur podcasters
and amateur homeschoolers.
Very amateur homeschoolers.
So for all of our friends out there who are going to be homeschooling soon,
good luck, respect. It will give you a whole new appreciation for teachers.
You're going to be picking up a whole lot of overtime if you can. That's my prediction. That's my prediction. So, all right. Well, we will chat with you in a couple of weeks. But until then, remember,
flexibility is the key to our power.
Did you say is the key to autopilot?
Flexibility. It's the key to air power.
And homeschooling.
See you guys.
Be on guard.